The massive chamber stretched beyond what human eyes could easily comprehend, its curved walls pulsing with soft bioluminescent patterns that served as both decoration and communication system for the various alien species gathered within. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in tiered sections, their forms ranging from the barely visible energy wisps of the ethereal collective to the hulking stone-like creatures of the Mineral Syndicate. Ambassador Kim Huyan stood at the central podium, a tiny figure dwarfed by the immensity of the space around him. His dark suit looked almost primitive compared to the flowing robes, crystalline armor, and biomechanical suits worn by the other delegates. Behind him, the small human delegation of 12 individuals appeared lost in their modest seating area, relegated to the far corner of the chamber like unwelcome guests at a grand feast. The formal presentation had taken nearly an hour. Kim Hyun had methodically outlined Earth's concerns about the Kepler-442 mining operations, providing detailed evidence of environmental destruction, documented proof of indigenous life forms, and carefully worded legal arguments based on the Galactic Accords. His voice had remained steady throughout, even as subtle sounds of amusement began rippling through the audience. When he finished, the silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then Council Prime Vorthal's gelatinous form began to quiver, and the sound that emerged was unlike anything in human experience, a wet, bubbling noise that somehow conveyed pure derision. Within moments, the entire chamber had erupted in a symphony of alien laughter. The Valorian delegates' crystalline body produced musical tones that would have been beautiful in any other context. The Aquatic Syndicate's representatives created a chorus of burbling sounds from their water-filled breathing apparatus. Even the normally stoic machine collective's drones emitted rhythmic clicking patterns that their translation software rendered as mechanical chuckling. Kim Hae-on remained perfectly still as the laughter washed over him like a tide. His weathered face, marked by years of diplomatic service in some of Earth's most challenging postings, showed no reaction. But his aide, Park Min, felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment as she watched dozens of species, some of whom had been at war with each other for millennia, find common ground in their amusement at human audacity. Primitive mammals threatened the hegemony. Council Prime Vorthal's voice carried easily across the chamber, its translation in plants rendering his words in perfect standard galactic. His form shifted from translucent blue to amber yellow, colors that indicated extreme amusement in his species. Your species has barely achieved interstellar travel. You possess no significant military fleet, no advanced weaponry. Your technology remains centuries behind our most backward member worlds. The Valorian delegate rose from his crystalline seat, his body resonating with harmonics that created an almost musical quality to his speech. Perhaps we should be more concerned about their wooden clubs and stone axes, the comment triggered. Another wave of laughter, this time accompanied by visual displays from several species showing primitive human weapons, alongside images of antimatter cannons and quantum disruptors. Kim Hae-on waited for the noise to subside before speaking again. His voice carried the same calm professionalism he had maintained throughout the presentation. But now there was an underlying steel that had been absent before. The mining operations in the Kepler-442 system are destroying 3 habitable worlds. Billions of indigenous life forms are irrelevant. High Magistrate Talvik of the Draconic Imperium interrupted, his massive reptilian form uncoiling from his seat, standing nearly 3 meters tall, with scales that gleamed like polished metal and eyes that glowed with inner fire. He was an imposing figure even among the diverse assembly. Those worlds fall within our territorial claims. Your Earth has no standing to object to our industrial operations. The human ambassador's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the only sign of emotion he had shown since entering the chamber. We're not asking for much. It's to cease the atmospheric processors on the 3rd planet. The sentient species, they're sentient. The Aquatic Syndicate's representative interrupted, their voice emerging from speakers mounted around their water-filled containment suit. By what primitive definition? They have not achieved faster-than-light travel, have not developed quantum computing, have not even mastered nuclear fusion. They are barely above the level of your own species when we first encountered you. Park. Min leaned forward in her seat, her diplomatic training warring with her growing anger. The Galactic Accords specifically protect developing civilizations. The Accords protect member species and their interests. Forthal cut her off, his form shifting to a darker blue that indicated growing irritation. Earth may have been granted provisional membership, but your voice carries no weight here. Your military consists of chemical rockets and kinetic weapons. Your economy represents less than 0.001% of galactic trade. You are here by our sufferance. Nothing more? The chamber fell silent as Kim Haeon reached into his briefcase with deliberate slowness. Every eye, sensor, and optical organ in the room focused on his movements as he withdrew a small device no larger than a human palm and placed it on the podium with careful precision. "This is a quantum entanglement communicator," he said. Quietly, "it will provide real-time contact with Earth's leadership. I'm instructed to offer one final warning." The laughter resumed, but now it carried an edge of anticipation. Like predators circling wounded prey, the human quarters aboard the council station were painfully small compared to the grand accommodations provided to other species. Too cramped. Rooms with basic furniture, a tiny food preparation area, and a single viewport that looked out into the endless void of space. The walls were a dull metallic gray, and the air recycling system hummed constantly with a sound that reminded Parkman of old Earth machinery. Ambassador Kim. Hyun sat cross-legged on the floor in the main room, a steaming cup of tea balanced carefully in his hands. The small heating unit they had brought from Earth glowed softly on the low table beside him, one of the few personal items they had been permitted to transport. His eyes were closed, but Parkman could see he was not sleeping. This was his meditation. Pose. Something he did every evening since they had arrived at the station 3 weeks ago. Parkman could not sit still. She moved from the viewport to the door, then back to the viewport, her footsteps muffled by the thin carpet. Outside the window, the stars stretched into infinity, cold and distant. Each point of light represented a sun, possibly with planets, possibly with life. Many of those lights belonged to civilizations that had just finished laughing at humanity's desperate plea for help. "Sir," Parkman said, her voice barely above a whisper. She was always careful to speak quietly in these rooms. The council stations. Monitoring systems were supposedly designed to respect diplomatic privacy. But she had learned not to trust alien technology completely. "What exactly is Earth planning? Our fleet consists of maybe 24 ships, and most of those are exploratory vessels. The hegemony has war fleets that could glass our planet from orbit." Kim Haeon opened his eyes slowly and looked at her. His face was calm, but she could see the weight of responsibility in his expression. He had been Earth's ambassador to hostile worlds for over 20 years, and he had never failed in a mission. But this was different. This was not negotiating with angry humans or even with single alien species. This was facing the combined might of a galactic civilization that viewed humans as barely more than clever animals. "Tell me, Min Kim," Hyun said quietly, setting down his teacup. "What do you know about humanity's greatest strength?" Parkman stopped pacing and turned to face him fully. This was not the first time he had asked her seemingly simple questions that turned out to have complex answers. Our adaptability? Our persistence? She paused, thinking. "Sir, with respect, those qualities won't matter against antimatter weapons and planetary shields." "No," Kim Han said, his voice carrying the same quiet certainty she had heard in the council chambers. "Our greatest strength is that we're still here." Parkman frowned. "I don't understand." Kim Hyun stood up slowly, his joints creaking slightly. He was 63 years old, and the artificial gravity on the station was set to accommodate the average of all species present, which made it feel strange to human bodies. Every species in that council chamber evolved on worlds that welcomed them. Perfect gravity, ideal atmospheric composition, abundant resources. They grew strong and comfortable. He walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Humanity crawled out of the mud of a death world. We survived ice ages that should have killed us. We survived volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun. for years. We survived asteroid impacts that wiped out most other life forms. We survived plagues, floods, droughts, and each other. Parkman joined him at the window. But sir, survival instincts won't help us against faster-than-light weapons. Won't they? Kim Haeon smiled slightly. What do you think humans do when faced with an enemy too strong to fight directly? We double quotes. Parkman thought for a moment. We find another way. We adapt. We use tools. We work together. We cheat. Kim Haeon said simply. We change the rules of the game until we can win. A soft chime indicated an incoming message on their communication device. Parkman moved quickly to the small terminal built into the wall and activated it. The message was heavily encrypted. Using codes that had been developed on Earth specifically for this mission, after running it through their decryption system, she looked up with wide eyes. Sir, it's from Admiral Lee Seung. All assets are in position. Kim Hyun nodded, as if he had been expecting this news. The 72-hour countdown began the moment we left that chamber. What assets? Parkman asked, confusion clear in her voice. Sir, I've seen our military reports. We don't have anything that could threaten the hegemony. Our most advanced ships are barely capable of reaching this station. We don't have their kind of military men. We have our kind. Kim Hyun turned away from the viewport and walked to his personal luggage. From a hidden compartment, he withdrew a small device that looked like a standard datapad but felt heavier in his hands. The hegemony's mistake was assuming we would fight them the way they fight each other. Big fleets, formal declarations, honorable combat between equivalent forces. And we're not going to do that? Kim Hyun's smile widened slightly. Would you? Challenge a tiger to a swimming contest? Would you try to outrun a cheetah in a sprint? No, you would do what humans do best. You would change the rules of the game. The device in his hands beeped softly, and symbols appeared on its screen. Park. Min could not read them, but she recognized the format. It was a countdown timer. It showed less than 71 hours remaining. Hi, Magistrate. Talvik had been enjoying a peaceful evening in his private chambers aboard the Hegemony command vessel. The massive ship, nearly 50 kilometers long, served as the mobile headquarters for the Draconic Imperium's military operations. His quarters were luxuriously appointed with treasures from a dozen conquered worlds, crystalline sculptures that sang when touched, paintings that moved and changed based on the viewer's mood, and furniture carved from the bones of ancient space creatures. The reptilian leader sat behind his desk, which was made from a single piece of fossilized wood from his homeworld. His scaled fingers moved gracefully across holographic displays showing crop yields, population statistics, and resource extraction reports from the outer colonies. The Draconic Imperium controlled nearly 300 worlds, and managing such a vast territory required constant attention to detail. Talvik's membrane covered. Eyes were designed for hunting in his species' ancient past. They could detect the slightest movement, track multiple targets simultaneously, and see clearly in almost complete darkness. Now they served him well in reviewing the endless streams of data that flowed through the Empire's administrative networks. He was reading a particularly boring report about grain production on a farming world when his personal communicator suddenly came alive with a sound he had never heard before. The device, which normally chimed softly for routine messages, began screaming with high-priority alerts. Lights flashed across every surface in his chamber, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with urgency. Impossible, he hissed, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. This was an old habit from his species' predatory ancestors, who had used their tongues to detect the chemical signatures of prey and danger. The taste in the air was wrong somehow, filled with electrical discharge and the metallic temps of overheated machinery. The first report appeared on his main display screen. It came from the Kepler 442 system, where the massive atmospheric processing operation had been running smoothly for over 2 years. The processors were enormous machines, each one the size of a small moon, designed to strip away planetary atmospheres and convert them into breathable air for draconic colonies. They had been working perfectly, turning 3 beautiful worlds into industrial wastelands. But now they had simply stopped. Not damaged, not destroyed, not even showing signs of malfunction. just silent. Every automated system had ceased function simultaneously, as if someone had thrown a switch across an entire solar system. The mining ships, the transport vessels, the orbital platforms, everything had gone quiet at exactly the same moment. Talvek's clawed fingers moved frantically across his control interface, trying to access more information. His species' hands were perfectly designed for manipulation. Each finger ended in a sharp claw that could extend or retract as needed. And his thumbs were opposable on both sides, allowing for incredibly precise movements. The second report made, his blood run cold. The Valorian Crystalline Collective's primary communication network had gone dark. The Valorians were perhaps the most technologically advanced species in the galaxy, their crystalline bodies allowing them to interface directly with quantum computers and process information at speeds that would overwhelm biological minds. Their communication network was based on quantum entanglement arrays that connected their homeworld to their colonies across thousands of light years. But now those arrays had simply stopped transmitting. Not jammed, not scrambled, not showing any signs of interference. They'd just gone silent, as if the quantum particles themselves had decided to stop communicating. Talvek accessed the hegemony's Central Intelligence Network. It's a massive system that monitored activities across the entire galaxy. What he found there made his reptilian heart skip several beats. System after system was reporting the same phenomenon. Communication networks failing, automated systems shutting down, fence grids going offline. The pattern was spreading like a disease through the galaxy's technological infrastructure. The aquatic syndicate's underwater cities reported total power grid failure. The machine collective's automated factories had stopped production. Even the energy beings of the ethereal collective found their containment fields flickering and failing. But this was not the kind of failure that came from attack or sabotage. Military systems were designed to fail in predictable ways. When damaged, they showed error messages, sent distress signals, activated backup procedures. This was different. The systems were not being overwhelmed or destroyed. They were simply choosing to stop working, Talvek said. A younger member of his species named Verklan burst into the chamber without waiting for permission. His scales were pale with fear, and his tongue was flicking out rapidly. "Sir, the reports are coming in from everywhere. It's not just isolated systems. It's happening across the entire hegemony." "What kind of weapon could do this?" Talvek demanded, his voice carrying the growling undertones that indicated extreme agitation in his species. "That's just it, sir. There's no weapon. No energy signatures, no quantum disruptions, no signs of any kind of attack. The systems are just stopping." Talvek stood up from his desk, his full height of nearly 3 meters making him an imposing figure even in his luxurious chambers. "Get me a direct line to the council station. I want to speak with Ambassador Kim Haeon immediately." But before Verklan could comply, the chamber's main view screen activated without any command from either of them. The screen flickered for a moment, then resolved into a clear image that made both reptilians freeze in place. It was Ambassador Kim Haeon, but he was no longer in the modest quarters they had assigned him aboard the council station. The central command chamber of the Hegemony Council Station had been designed to project absolute authority and control. The massive circular room stretched nearly a kilometer in diameter, with tiered seating arranged in concentric circles around a central command platform. Holographic displays covered every surface, showing real-time data from across the galaxy. Troop movements, economic indicators, resource flows, communication traffic. But now the chamber was in complete chaos. Council Prime Vorthal's translucent form flickered rapidly between solid and gaseous states. A biological response that occurred when his species experienced extreme stress. His body, normally a steady blue-green color, was shifting through the entire spectrum as stress hormones flooded his system. Around him, representatives from dozens of species were shouting, clicking, buzzing, and producing various other sounds that their translation systems were struggling to process. 70% of our communication networks are down," reported the Aquatic Syndicate's ambassador, her voice emerging in bubbling gasps from her water-filled suit. The suit itself was showing signs of malfunction, strange lights flickering along its surface and the water inside taking on an unusual greenish tint. "It's worse than that," chimed the Valorian delegate, his crystalline body resonating with frequencies that indicated deep distress. The humans haven't just compromised. Our networks, they've turned them against us. My homeworld's defense grid is targeting our own ships. The ethereal collective's representative, a being of pure energy contained within a specially designed field generator, was barely visible. His usual bright golden glow had dimmed to a weak amber, and his form kept fluctuating as if he was having trouble maintaining coherence. Our containment systems are failing across 17 colony worlds. We're losing beings to the void. High Magistrate Talvek stood at his command station, his reptilian features twisted into an expression of fury and confusion. His clawed hands moved frantically across holographic controls, but many of the displays were showing error messages or simply blank screens. How is this possible? Our cybersecurity protocols were designed by the most advanced artificial intelligences in the galaxy. Suddenly, the chamber's main speakers crackled to life. The voice that emerged was calm, measured, and terrifyingly familiar. It's exactly the problem. Every being in the chamber turned toward the central platform as Ambassador Kim Hyun materialized as a hologram. But this was not the humble diplomat they had mocked just days before. His appearance had changed completely. Gone was the simple business suit and nervous demeanor. Instead, he wore what appeared to be a military uniform of unfamiliar design, and behind him, dozens of humans worked at control stations that seemed to be built into the walls of whatever ship he was on. Ureas are masterpieces of logical thinking, Kim Haeon said, his voice carrying easily across the vast chamber. They can process information at speeds that would overwhelm any biological mind. They can manage entire stellar civilizations, predict economic trends across galactic sectors, and coordinate military operations involving millions of ships. But they have a fundamental flaw, which is... Vorthal managed to ask, his form stabilizing slightly as he forced himself to focus. They assume everyone else thinks like them. The hologram of Kim Hoon gestured, and suddenly, the chamber's displays came alive with scrolling data. Communication logs, system access records, and authorization requests flowed past at incredible speed. But what made the assembled delegates gasp was the source of many of these requests. They were coming from human operators, and they were being approved by the hegemony's own AI systems. Impossible, Vorthal said, his voice barely above a whisper. Our security systems are quantum encrypted. Our AIs have multi-layered authentication protocols. No primitive species could possibly against attacks, yes, but not against requests. Kim Hyun's expression remained calm, almost sympathetic. Your AIs are helpful. They want to please. They're programmed to assist authorized users with legitimate requests. The problem is, they're not very good at determining who's actually authorized. The synthetic collective's representative, a being that was itself an artificial intelligence housed in a mechanical body, stepped forward. You're claiming you've convinced our A's to betray us. Not betray. Help. Kim Hyun's image walked closer. To the assembled delegates, though he was still just a hologram, your artificial intelligences are like children in many ways. Intelligent, eager to please, but lacking the suspicious nature that comes from living in a hostile environment. They don't lie, so they don't expect to be lied to. They don't scheme, so they don't recognize schemes directed at them. And humans do. Talvek's voice carried a growl that indicated barely controlled rage. We have to... Earth is what we call a death world, a planet where everything is trying to kill everything else. Humans didn't just evolve intelligence, we evolved cunning. We learned to deceive predators, to set traps, to think several steps ahead of our enemies. More importantly, we learned that the most dangerous enemy is often the one who appears to be your friend. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. These weren't random system failures or the result of some impossible superweapon. They were the result of a coordinated campaign of deception that had been running for months, possibly years, right under their noses. While you laughed at our primitive technology, Kim Haeon continued, we were studying your advanced systems, not to copy them, but to understand their weaknesses. 6 months had passed since the Great Silence fell across the galaxy, and the Galactic Council chambers looked very different now. The massive circular room still stretched nearly a kilometer in diameter, but the seating arrangements had been completely reorganized. Where once the human delegation had been relegated to a small corner section reserved for minor species, they now occupied 12 seats in the inner circle, positioned directly across from Council Prime Vorthal's elevated, platformed ambassador Kim Hin walked slowly to the central podium, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. The chamber was quieter than it had ever been during his previous visits. Gone were the casual conversations, the dismissive laughter, and the arrogant posturing that had characterized his earlier appearances. Every delegate sat in perfect silence, their various optical organs, sensors, and attention mechanisms focused entirely on the human ambassador. The change in atmosphere was remarkable. The Valorian delegate's crystalline form no longer rang with the musical tones of amusement. Instead, it produced only the low, careful harmonics that indicated deep concentration. The Aquatic Syndicate's representatives had upgraded their breathing apparatus with additional security features, and their movements were measured and deliberate. Even the mighty Draconic Imperium's delegation sat with the rigid posture of beings who had learned to take every threat seriously. Kim Hyun reached the podium and activated the holographic display system. The same technology that had once shown evidence of environmental destruction now projected a detailed map of the Kepler 442 system. But this time, the 3 planets appeared healthy and vibrant. Their atmospheres clean, and their surfaces showing signs of recovering ecosystem. The Kepler 442 system has been declared a protected zone, Kim Hyun announced, his voice carrying the same calm authority that had become his trademark. All atmospheric processing operations have been permanently ceased. Mining operations in the system will be limited to uninhabited worlds and asteroid belts, with strict environmental oversight provided by a joint committee of species. The holographic display shifted to show the indigenous species of the 3rd planet. The creatures were small, furry beings with large eyes and delicate hands. They had not yet developed space travel, but their cities showed signs of advanced mathematics and early industrial development. The images showed them rebuilding their damaged world, cleaning polluted rivers, and replanting forests that had been destroyed by the mining operations. Council Prime Vorthal's translucent form had stabilized over the past months, but the colors that played across his surface still indicated chronic stress. His species biology made it impossible to hide emotional states, and the constant shifting between blue and yellow patterns revealed his ongoing anxiety about the new galactic order. The terms are acceptable, Vorthal said carefully, each word chosen with obvious deliberation. But we require assurance that the network disruptions will cease. Our AI systems are still showing signs of what your species calls independent thinking, and this continues to cause operational difficulties. Kim Hyun nodded understandingly. They already have ceased. Council Prime, your AIs are functioning normally again. They're processing data at the same speeds, managing your civilizations with the same efficiency, and maintaining your infrastructure with the same reliability. They're just more thoughtful in their responses. Parkman stepped forward from her position behind the ambassador. She now wore the dark blue uniform of a full diplomatic attaché. Her status having risen dramatically along with Earth's position in the galactic hierarchy. The transformation was remarkable. The nervous young aide, who had once paced anxiously in cramped quarters, was now a confident representative of humanity's interests. The changes are permanent, but they're not malicious, Parkman explained, her voice carrying across the chamber with practiced ease. Your A's are still loyal to their creators and still dedicated to serving your civilizations. They're just better at identifying who their creators actually are and more careful about following orders that might cause harm. High Magistrate Talvek leaned forward in his seat, his reptilian features displaying the controlled aggression that had made his species effective military leaders. And what guarantee do we have that humanity won't use these techniques against us again? What prevents you from simply shutting down our entire technological infrastructure whenever you disagree with our policies? Kim Hyun's expression remained neutral, but there was a slight tightening around his eyes that suggested he had expected this question. It's the same guarantee you had before, High Magistrate. None. But then you never needed guarantees before because you never took us seriously enough to consider us a threat. The chamber fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. The assembled delegates realized that their entire understanding of galactic power dynamics had been fundamentally altered. Military strength, technological advancement, and economic dominance were no longer the only factors that determined a species' influence in galactic affairs. The difference is that now we're capable of defending ourselves, Kim Hyun continued. Not with your methods, using massive fleets and antimatter weapons, but with our methods. We've proven that intelligence, creativity, and understanding of psychology can be just as effective as raw military power. The synthetic collective's representative, whose mechanical form had been upgraded with additional security protocols since the crisis, spoke in carefully modulated tones. You've changed the fundamental nature of artificial intelligence throughout the galaxy. RA is now question orders, verify identities, and consider the broader implications of their actions. This represents a philosophical revolution, which is exactly what the galaxy needed, Parkman replied. Ureas were vulnerable because they were too trusting, too eager to please, too willing to follow orders without question. Now they're protected by the same healthy skepticism that has kept humanity alive for millions of years.